The first time I heard my father's voice after 6 years, he was already gone. It happened 3 days after the funeral. 3 days after I stood in the back row of a crowded church, watching people talk about a man I wasn't sure I even knew anymore. 3 days after I watched his new family stand beside the casket while I stood alone near the doors, wondering if I even belonged there. My name is Emma Carter. And for 6 years, I believed my father had chosen another family over me. I believed he stopped calling because he stopped caring. I believed the silence meant I wasn't important enough to fight for. Believed he moved on. The worst part wasn't losing him. The worst part was believing he lost me first. The funeral ended the way funerals usually do. Quiet conversations. Half-finished hugs. Paper cups filled with coffee nobody wanted to drink. People saying things like, "He talked about you all the time," even though I hadn't spoken to him in years. I smiled politely every time I heard it. Not because I believed them. Because correcting strangers at a funeral somehow felt cruel. By the time I reached the parking lot, I was emotionally exhausted. I just wanted to leave. I had almost reached my car when someone called my name. "Emma!" I turned around. A man in his 60s stood near the church steps holding a dark leather folder against his chest. He looked familiar. Not familiar enough to place immediately. Then I remembered. Dad's lawyer. Mr. Harrison. We had met once. A long time ago. Back when I was still part of his life. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. Part of me wanted to say no. I had spent years avoiding conversations about my father. Avoiding questions. Avoiding memories. But something in his expression stopped me. He looked nervous. Almost uncomfortable. "As long as it's quick." He nodded. "There was something your father wanted you to have." My chest tightened immediately. For a second I thought maybe he'd left me money. An inheritance. A letter in his will. Something official. Instead, Mr. Harrison opened the folder and pulled out a small flash drive. Nothing more. No explanation. No envelope. Just a cheap black flash drive. "He asked me to give this to you personally." I stared at it. "What is it?" He hesitated. "A recording." I frowned. "What kind of recording?" His expression softened. "I think that's something your father wanted you to hear for yourself." I took the flash drive without saying anything. It felt impossibly light for something that suddenly felt so heavy. Why didn't he send it himself? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Mr. Harrison looked away for a moment. Then he answered quietly. "He tried." I didn't understand what that meant. Not then. I thanked him, got into my car, and drove home with the flash drive sitting untouched in the passenger seat beside me. Stayed there all afternoon. Then all evening. By midnight, I was still staring at it from across my kitchen table. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Because opening it meant reopening things I had spent years trying to bury. Old disappointments. Old anger. Old questions with no answers. At 1 o'clock in the morning I finally plugged it into my laptop. There was only one file. Voicemail under 2019 under final. My heart started racing. Click play. Static filled the room for a second. Then I heard him. "Hey, sweetheart." I stopped breathing. 'Cause no matter how angry you are, no matter how much time passes, some voices still feel like home. He sounded older. More tired. But it was him. My dad. "Not sure if you'll ever hear this message." Was. "But if you do, there are some things I need you to know." I felt my hands start shaking. "If you're listening to this, then something probably happened to me before I got the chance to explain everything." "Explain what?" I leaned closer to the screen. "I don't know why we stopped being a family." My chest tightened. Every time I tried to understand it, I ended up with more questions than answers. Questions. Not answers. Questions. That wasn't what I expected him to say. "I know you think I gave up on you." Tears filled my eyes immediately. 'Cause that was exactly what I thought. Exactly what I'd believed for 6 years. "But, Emma." His voice cracked. "I never stopped trying to reach you." The room went silent. My mind rejected the words immediately. Because they couldn't be true. Could they? I don't know what happened to us. Another pause. But I need you to know this before it's too late. His breathing sounded heavier now. You were never forgotten. The tears came so suddenly I couldn't stop them. Not because I believed him. Because a part of me desperately wanted to. I called every birthday. My heart stopped. I sent letters. Another pause. I left messages. I shook my head. Well, no, he didn't. He couldn't have. Because if he had called, if he had written, then where were they? And if he had really tried, why didn't I know? His voice returned through the speakers. If you never got them. He stopped speaking for a moment. Then quietly added. Then maybe the story we were both told wasn't the truth. I stared at the laptop screen. Completely frozen. Because for the first time in 6 years, the version of events I'd spent so long believing suddenly didn't feel as solid as it used to. And once doubt enters a story, changes everything. I listened to the voicemail 3 more times before the sun came up. Not because I was trying to understand the words. Because I was trying to understand the man who said them. For 6 years I had built an entire version of my father in my head. The father who stopped calling. The father who forgot birthdays. The father who chose a new wife and new children and decided there wasn't enough room left for me. That version of him had become easier to live with than the alternative. Because anger is easier than heartbreak. Blame is easier than confusion. But now there was a crack in the story. Small one. But big enough to let doubt in. I barely slept that night. By 7 in the morning I was sitting at my kitchen counter staring at my phone. His old number was still saved. Even after 6 years I never deleted it. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me always hoped it would ring again. Instead, I opened the contact and stared at it for almost 10 minutes. Then I closed it. What was I supposed to do? Call a disconnected number. Ask a voicemail for answers. By lunchtime, I had convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe grief was playing tricks on me. Maybe Mr. Harrison had given me the recording because dying people say emotional things. People rewrite history when they're scared. People remember the best parts. Maybe that's all this was. Then my phone rang. Mr. Harrison. I almost ignored it. Instead I answered. Hello. Did you listen to it? Straight to the point. Yes. Silence. And I looked out the window. He said he called me. Another pause. He did. The answer came so quickly that I almost missed it. What? He called every year. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped across the floor. No, he didn't. He did. Then why didn't I get the calls? Mr. Harrison was quiet for several seconds. Long enough to make my stomach tighten. That's what your father wanted to know too. The room suddenly felt smaller. He asked me to help him keep records. What kind of records? Phone logs. My heartbeat started climbing. Emails. Another pause. Copies of letters. I couldn't speak. Because people don't keep evidence for things they imagine. Emma. His voice softened. Your father spent years trying to figure out why communication between the two of you kept disappearing. The words hit me harder than I expected. Communication between the two of you. Not your father trying to contact you. Not you ignoring your father. Communication. As if something stood in the middle. As if someone stood in the middle. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. Because if he was telling the truth, then everything else changed. Everything. I think you should come by my office. Closed my eyes. Why? Because there are some things your father wanted you to see. I arrived 40 minutes later. Mr. Harrison's office looked exactly like I remembered. Dark shelves. Leather chairs. The smell of coffee and old paper. He didn't waste time with small talk. He walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick blue folder. Then he placed it on the desk between us. My name was written across the front. Emma Carter. My chest tightened. What is this? He sat down slowly. Your father called it his insurance policy. I looked at him. Insurance against what? He met my eyes. Being forgotten. I opened the folder. Inside were pages and pages of documents. Phone bills. Printed emails. Photographs. Handwritten notes. The first page stopped me immediately. May 14, 2019. Outgoing call to Emma Carter. Duration: 4 minutes 12 seconds. I stared at it. Because May 14th was my birthday. My 26th birthday. The day I sat beside my phone waiting for him to call. The day he never called. Or at least, the day I thought he never called. There are more. My hands trembled as I turned the page. September 3rd. Voicemail left. December 24th. Call unanswered. January 11th. Birthday card mailed. March 7th. Email sent. Again. And again. And again. Years of attempts. Years of reaching. Years of trying. The room blurred. Because every page destroyed another piece of the story I'd been carrying. Why are you showing me this now? My voice barely worked. Because your father asked me to wait. Wait for what? His expression changed. He said if the truth ever came out, it needed to come from evidence, not anger. That sounded exactly like Dad. Painfully exactly like Dad. I turned another page. Printed email. Subject line. I don't know what happened. The message was short. If I've done something to hurt you, please tell me what it is. Can handle anger. I can handle disappointment. What I can't handle is silence. Love. The date on the email was 4 years old. I had never seen it. Never answered it. Never even knew it existed. A tear landed on the paper. Then another. Then another. I thought he stopped caring. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. I know. I hated him. The words hurt to say out loud. He knew that too. I looked up sharply. What? He thought you hated him. For a moment neither of us spoke. Because somewhere over the last 6 years, a father believed his daughter gave up on him. And a daughter believed her father gave up on her. Both of them wrong. Both of them hurting. Both of them waiting for the other person to make the first move. My eyes drifted back to the folder. There had to be 50 pages inside. Maybe more. Evidence of birthdays remembered. Milestones noticed. Messages sent into silence. Then I saw something different. A yellow sticky note attached to one of the pages. Dad's handwriting. If Emma ever sees this folder, tell her to look in the workshop. I frowned. The workshop. Mr. Harrison nodded. He spent most of his time there during the last few years. Why would he leave something there? A sad smile crossed his face. Because your father never really stopped believing you'd come looking for him. I looked down at the note again. The workshop. Another clue. Another question. Another door opening just when I thought the story was over. For 6 years, I believed I was reading the final chapter of my relationship with my father. Now I was starting to realize. I had only read the first half of the book. I drove to the workshop the next morning. Not because I was ready. 'Cause I knew I never would be. Some doors don't open when you're prepared. They open when you're out of excuses. The workshop sat behind the house, exactly where it had always been. A small building with faded blue paint and windows that needed cleaning. Dad built it himself when I was 12. Back then it felt magical. The smell of fresh wood. The sound of tools against old workbenches. The radio playing songs neither of us knew the words to. For years it was our place. Not the house. Not the living room. The workshop. Then life happened. College. Distance. Arguments. Silence. And somehow 6 years disappeared. I stood outside the door longer than I want to admit. Then I pushed it open. The smell hit me immediately. Wood dust. Coffee. Old paper. Memories. The room looked frozen in time. Tools hung neatly on the wall. Projects sat unfinished on shelves. His old jacket still hung beside the door. For one impossible second, I expected him to walk around the corner and ask why I was late. Instead there was only silence. On the workbench sat a small framed photograph. Me, age 14. Holding up a crooked birdhouse we built together. Written underneath in black marker. Emma insisted it was straight. She was wrong. She still won the argument. I laughed despite myself. That was us. Always teasing. Always competing. Always laughing. Or at least we used to. My eyes moved around the room. Where was I supposed to look? The sticky note only said one thing. Look in the workshop. Not where. Not how. Just look. Open drawers. Check cabinets. Looked through shelves filled with nails and screws and receipts older than some cars. Nothing. After nearly an hour, frustration started replacing curiosity. Maybe there wasn't anything here. Maybe Dad meant something symbolic. Maybe. Then I noticed the old radio. It sat in the corner near his chair. The same radio we'd listened to while building bookshelves and fixing chairs and pretending we knew what we were doing. Something felt strange about it. It was unplugged. Dad never unplugged the radio. Ever. I walked over and picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have. My pulse quickened. Carefully I turned it over. Tape held the battery compartment shut. Not factory tape. New tape. My hands started shaking. Inside the compartment sat a small key. And another note. If you're reading this, you kept going. But the tears came instantly. Because somehow even now, even after everything, he still sounded like Dad. I turned the note over. Storage locker 214. North Ridge Storage. The key fit the lock. Of course it did. Another clue. Another breadcrumb. Another message sent forward through time. I stared at the key resting in my hand. How long had he planned this? How long had he been preparing for the possibility that one day I'd come looking for answers? Hours. Months. Years. My eyes drifted toward his chair. Beside it sat a notebook. Plain black cover. Worn edges. I opened it carefully. The first page contained only one sentence. Things that don't make sense. Underneath it sat a list. Emma says I never call. But phone records say I do. Emma says she never got the birthday cards. But they were mailed. Emails sent but never answered. Something is wrong. I stopped breathing. Because this wasn't grief. This wasn't confusion. This was investigation. Dad knew. Maybe not everything. But enough. Enough to realize the story he was being told didn't fit reality. I turned another page. Another note. If I'm right, then Emma thinks I abandoned her. If she's right, then someone wants us apart. My hands covered my mouth. Because that sentence changed everything. Not because it proved anything. Because it asked the question neither of us wanted to ask. Who benefits when families stop talking? The room suddenly felt smaller. The silence heavier. A memory surfaced immediately. Linda answering Dad's phone at family dinners. Linda saying he was busy. Linda telling me not to worry because she'd pass along messages. Well, no, that was impossible. Wasn't it? Closed the notebook. Because I wasn't ready for where my thoughts were going. My phone rang. Taylor. I stared at the screen. Dad's stepson. The son he raised while I disappeared. For years I blamed him too. Not because he did anything wrong. Because grief needs somewhere to go. Eventually I answered. Hello. Mr. Harrison said you were at the workshop. Straight to the point. Yeah. Silence. Did you find it? Question hit me immediately. Find it. Not find something. Find it. As if he already knew. As a matter of fact, I did. Another pause. Then a deep breath. Emma. His voice sounded nervous. There are some things we need to talk about. I looked down at the key in my hand. The storage locker. The notebook. The missing calls. The unanswered emails. And suddenly I realized something. Dad hadn't left me an explanation. He'd left me an investigation. And for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't trying to move on anymore. I was trying to find the truth. Tyler asked me to meet him at a diner just outside town. The kind of place Dad loved. Cheap coffee. Old booths. Waitresses who called everyone hon. I almost laughed at the irony. Somehow, every road in this story seemed to lead back to him. Tyler was already there when I arrived. He looked nervous. Not guilty. Not defensive. Just nervous. The kind of nervous that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. He stood when he saw me. For a second, neither of us knew whether to shake hands or hug. We settled for awkward smiles. I ordered coffee. I sat down across from him. Thanks. Silence settled between us. Not hostile. Just unfamiliar. Finally he spoke. You found something in the workshop, didn't you? I looked at him carefully. How did you know? He exhaled slowly. Because Dad told me you would. The answer caught me off guard. What? He said if you ever came back, you'd start in the workshop. Despite everything, I smiled. That sounded exactly like him. Tyler noticed. He really knew you. The words hit harder than he probably intended. Because for years, I convinced myself he didn't. I reached into my bag and placed the notebook on the table. Tyler stared at the cover. His expression changed immediately. You found that. You've seen it before. He nodded. Not the whole thing. His eyes stayed on the notebook. But I knew he was keeping notes. Why? Tyler looked out the window for a moment. Because he thought he was losing his mind. My stomach dropped. What? He'd tell me he called you. Tyler swallowed hard. Then he'd ask why you never answered. I couldn't speak. He'd show me emails he sent. Tyler shook his head. Then he'd ask why you hated him. The word hate hit me like a punch. Because I had hated him. Or at least I thought I did. Maybe I hated the version of him I created. The version that left. The version that stopped trying. The version that never existed. What did you tell him? Tyler met my eyes. I told him maybe you needed space. His voice cracked slightly. I didn't know what else to say. Neither did I. The waitress placed 2 coffees on the table and disappeared. Neither of us touched them. There was one night I'll never forget. Tyler stared into the cup in front of him. Dad was sitting in the workshop. His voice grew quieter. He had your graduation picture in his hands. Froze. He asked me if I thought a father could lose a daughter while both of them were still alive. The diner suddenly felt very small. I didn't know what to say. Tyler looked down. So I lied. My heart tightened. I told him you'd come around eventually. A sad smile crossed his face. I guess for once I was right. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then I pulled the storage key from my pocket and placed it on the table. Tyler stared at it immediately. Where did you get that? The radio. His face went pale. The radio. You know what this opens? He nodded slowly. I think so. I leaned forward. Then tell me. Tyler hesitated. The hesitation lasted just long enough to make me nervous. Finally he spoke. About 2 years ago, Dad rented a storage unit. Why? He said he needed somewhere safe. Safe from what? Tyler looked uncomfortable. I don't know. I watched him carefully. He was hiding something. Not lying. Protecting. There's a difference. What aren't you telling me? He closed his eyes briefly. When Dad started questioning what was happening with the calls and letters, he stopped. Things got tense at home. Home. Not with me. Home. My chest tightened. With who? He already knew I knew the answer. He just didn't want to say it. My mom. There it was. Out in the open. Not an accusation. Not proof. Just a name. Tyler rubbed his forehead. She thought he was becoming obsessed. Obsessed with what? Finding out why you disappeared. The words landed between us. Heavy. Permanent. He never stopped looking for reasons. Tyler looked at me. Never. I looked down at the key. Storage locker 214. Somewhere inside that unit were answers. Maybe the answers. Maybe the proof. Maybe the thing Dad couldn't say out loud while he was alive. When does it close? Yes. Tyler checked his watch. 6. I looked at mine. 4:32. Enough time. Barely. Tyler saw the decision happen on my face. I'll come with you. Part of me wanted to say no. 4 years. Tyler represented everything I thought I'd lost. The replacement son. The new family. The life Dad chose instead of me. But sitting across from him now, I realized something. He lost someone too. Not just Dad. Me. We were both standing on opposite sides of the same misunderstanding. Okay. The drive to North Ridge Storage took 20 minutes. Neither of us talked much. What do you say when you're driving toward the thing that might rewrite your entire life? The storage facility looked ordinary. Rows of metal doors. Security cameras. Chain-link fences. Nothing about it suggested life-changing secrets lived inside. Locker 214 sat near the back. Ray. Unremarkable. My hands shook as I slid the key into the lock. For a second it wouldn't turn. Click. The door rolled upward slowly. Tyler and I stood frozen. Inside sat boxes. Dozens of them. Neatly labeled. 2019. 2020. 2021. 2022. Years. Years of something. Years of evidence. Years of waiting. On top of the nearest box sat a single white envelope. My name was written across the front. In Dad's handwriting. Underneath it were 4 words. Start here first. I picked up the envelope carefully. Suddenly afraid to open it. Suddenly afraid not to. Because deep down I knew something. Whatever was inside this letter. Nothing would ever be the same again. I stared at the envelope for almost a full minute before opening it. My name looked strange in Dad's handwriting now. Familiar. Painful. Comforting. All at the same time. Tyler stood beside me without saying a word. For once, silence felt respectful instead of empty. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a letter. Only 1 page. Folded neatly. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Sweetheart, if you're reading this, then you found the storage unit. That means one of 2 things happened. Either I finally convinced you that I never stopped trying. Or you're as stubborn as you've always been. Honestly, I'm hoping for both. I smiled despite myself. Classic Dad. If you've come this far, I need you to promise me something. Read everything before making decisions. Read everything before choosing anger. Read everything before choosing blame. Because once the truth starts coming out, it becomes very easy to hate the wrong people. I looked up at Tyler. He was reading over my shoulder. His expression had gone pale. Dad continued. There are things in these boxes that may hurt you. Some of them hurt me too. But pain and truth are not the same thing. Truth heals eventually. Lies don't. Please remember that. I took a breath and kept reading. Most importantly, if Linda is still alive when you read this, listen to her before you judge her. Understanding someone's reasons doesn't erase the damage they caused. But refusing to understand guarantees the damage continues. My throat tightened. Even now. Even after everything. He was trying to protect everyone. The letter ended with one final sentence. The answers are in box 3. Start there. I looked around the storage unit. Every box was labeled by year. Except one. A plain cardboard box sitting by itself near the back wall. Box 3. Course. Dad always loved dramatic timing. Tyler carried it to the floor between us. Neither of us spoke. Inside were folders. Dozens of them. Phone records. Printed emails. Copies of handwritten letters. And beneath all of them sat a digital recorder. A sticky note was attached to the top. If you're confused, play this first. My hands shook as I pressed play. Static filled the small storage unit. Then Dad's voice returned. If you're listening to this, then I wasn't able to explain things myself. So I'll start with what I know. Paper shuffled in the background. I know I called Emma. Another pause. I know Emma believes I didn't. His voice sounded tired. Not angry. Just tired. Both things cannot be true at the same time. I felt my chest tighten. So I started keeping records. More paper moving. I discovered missing emails. Another pause. Returned letters. Voicemails marked delivered that were never received. Tyler closed his eyes. He already knew some of this. Not all of it, but enough. Dad continued. I don't believe Emma ignored me. The tears came immediately. Because for years, the thing that hurt most wasn't losing him. It was believing he thought I abandoned him too. I know my daughter. His voice cracked slightly. Stubborn people don't disappear quietly. I laughed through tears. Even now he was teasing me. Then his voice changed. More serious. More careful. There is one thing I need to say very clearly. The room felt smaller. If this investigation leads toward Linda, remember something. Long pause. Fear makes good people make terrible choices. Tyler looked away. Dad continued. Fear of losing someone. Fear of being replaced. Fear of not being enough. Another pause. None of those fears excuse what happened. But understanding them matters. The recording clicked off. Silence filled the storage unit. Neither of us moved. Finally Tyler spoke. He knew. I nodded slowly. He suspected. Tyler stared at the floor. No. He swallowed hard. I think he knew. I looked at him. What makes you say that? Tyler hesitated. Then he reached into one of the folders. Carefully he pulled out an envelope. Already opened. Already read. His name was written on the front. You've seen this before. It wasn't a question. He nodded. A month before Dad passed away. My heart started racing. What did it say? Tyler looked down. Then quietly answered. He asked me to protect Sophie. The words hit me immediately. Protect her from what? Tyler met my eyes. From choosing sides. The storage unit suddenly felt cold. Because that meant Dad knew something bigger was happening. Something serious enough to divide the family. He asked me to promise that no matter what happened. Tyler's voice cracked. I wouldn't let Sophie lose a sister she never chose to lose. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Because somehow, even at the end, Dad wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting us. Tyler suddenly laughed once. Sad laugh. You know what's funny? I shook my head. He spent years trying to hold everyone together. Tyler looked around the storage unit. And somehow we're finally becoming a family because he refused to stop trying. My eyes moved toward the remaining boxes. There were still so many answers waiting. Too many. But one thing had already become clear. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about misunderstanding, fear, silence, and the terrible things that happen when people stop talking to each other. I reached for the next folder. Across the front, written in Dad's handwriting, were 4 words that made my heart stop. The day everything changed. I opened the next folder slowly, almost carefully, like moving too fast might somehow make the truth worse. Across the tab, Dad had written, "Letters never delivered." My stomach tightened. Because deep down, I already knew what I was about to find. Inside were envelopes. Dozens of them. Every single one addressed to me. Every single one unopened. Every single one stamped and mailed. My hands trembled as I picked up the first one. March 2019. Then another. September 2019. December 2019. Birthday cards. Christmas cards. Congratulations cards. Get well cards. Just because cards. Years. Entire years sitting quietly inside cardboard boxes. Waiting for someone who never knew they existed. I opened one carefully. Saw a girl at the hardware store today arguing with an employee about the correct way to build a shelf. Thought of you immediately. You were probably right too. I laughed through tears. 'Cause he knew me that well. Another letter. Happy birthday, sweetheart. 30 is a strange age. You're old enough to know better and young enough not to care. Best combination in the world. Hope you're celebrating somewhere loud. Love, Dad. Another. Saw your favorite cookies at the grocery store today. Bought them out of habit. Then remembered you're not coming by anymore. Still bought them anyway. Just in case. I had to stop reading. Because grief doesn't always arrive like an explosion. Sometimes it arrives quietly. In grocery stores. In birthdays. In habits people never meant to keep. Tyler looked away to give me a moment. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I opened another envelope. This one felt different. The handwriting looked messy. Rushed. Inside was a single page. Today I received another birthday card back in the mail. Wrong address, apparently. Funny thing is, it's the same address I've used for years. I don't know if you're moving or if something else is happening. But I'm starting to feel like our messages are disappearing into a room neither of us can enter. If you're angry, tell me. If you're hurt, tell me. If you never want to speak to me again, tell me that too. Silence is the only thing I don't know how to answer. Love. Closed my eyes. Because that line felt familiar. Silence is the only thing I don't know how to answer. That wasn't just a sentence. That was a man drowning quietly. Trying not to scare anyone. I looked deeper into the folder. Near the bottom sat several envelopes marked Return to Sender. My breath caught. Returned. Why would they be returned? Picked one up. The answer was written across the front in red ink. Recipient no longer lives at this address. I stared at it. 'Cause I had lived there. For 3 years. The address was correct. Completely correct. Tyler noticed my expression. What's wrong? I handed him the envelope. His eyes widened. That's your old apartment. I know. We looked at each other. Neither of us wanted to say it. Because saying it out loud made it real. Someone had changed the story. Not once. Not twice. Repeatedly. Deliberately. Tyler opened another envelope. His face lost color immediately. Emma. He handed it to me. Inside was a printed email chain. From Dad's email account. Mine. Object. Please tell me you're okay. The message was short. This is my 4th email this month. I'm starting to worry. If you need space, I understand. If you're angry, I understand. But please send one sentence. Just one. Tell me you're okay. Love. Underneath it sat another message. Delivery failed. Recipient email does not exist. Froze. 'Cause the email address was wrong. Not completely wrong. One letter wrong. One missing letter. One tiny change. Enough to make sure every message disappeared forever. My heart started racing. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This wasn't bad timing. This wasn't crossed wires. This was intervention. Careful. Repeated. Intentional intervention. Tyler leaned back against the storage wall. Oh my God. I looked at him. You didn't know. He shook his head immediately. No. His voice cracked. I swear I didn't know. I believed him. Because the shock on his face looked exactly like the one I felt. I looked back at the failed email. One missing letter. One changed address. One decision. And suddenly 6 years vanished. 6 years built on tiny choices made by someone else. Tiny choices with enormous consequences. Tyler reached into the folder again. Then stopped. His entire body froze. What? He held up a photograph. I took it from him. Dad sat in the workshop. The blue folder was open beside him. A calendar on the wall behind him. Every date crossed out. Sep 1. My birthday. Circled in blue. Waiting. Even after everything. He waited. I looked at the back of the photo. Dad had written something there. Hope is a stubborn thing. Guess Emma inherited that from me. A laugh escaped me through tears. Because somehow, even after years of silence, even after unanswered calls and missing letters, even after believing I was gone forever, he still believed I'd come back. Tyler looked toward the remaining folders. There were fewer now. Not many. Just enough to be dangerous. Just enough to contain the answer we were both avoiding. Because evidence only points in directions. Eventually, directions become names. And both of us already knew which name was waiting for us in the next box. Neither of us wanted to open it, because once we did, there would be no going back. I looked at Tyler. He looked back at me. Neither of us moved. Because sometimes the truth doesn't scare you because it's unknown. It scares you because deep down, you already know it. The final folder sat alone at the bottom of the box. No year. No label. Just a plain manila folder. Dad's handwriting covered the front. Read this last. Course. Even now he was organizing our emotions for us. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single document. A transcript. Recorded conversation. March 14, 2022. My heart started racing. A recording. Tyler leaned closer. Dad must have transcribed it himself. The first line hit immediately. Robert. Did Emma call while I was sleeping? Linda, no. Another line. Robert, that's strange. I thought she said she'd try again this week. Another pause. Linda. Robert, I think you need to accept that she's moved on. The room went silent. Kept reading. Robert, that's not like her. Linda, people change. Robert, not that much. My throat tightened. Because even after 6 years, he still knew me. Still trusted the version of me that existed before all this. The conversation continued. Linda, you're hurting yourself by holding on to this. Robert. I'm hurting because none of it makes sense. Another pause. Then the sentence that changed everything. Robert. A father knows when his daughter stops loving him. He continued. Robert. This doesn't feel like that. Closed my eyes. 'Cause he knew. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to trust his instincts over the story he was being given. Tyler took a deep breath beside me. I remember that argument. I looked up. You do. He nodded slowly. It lasted hours. His voice sounded distant. Afterward, Dad stayed in the workshop all night. The workshop. Again. Always the workshop. He started keeping copies of everything after that. I looked back at the transcript. Near the bottom sat another exchange. Robert. Did you change her number in my phone? Long pause. Linda. Why would I do that? Robert. Because I called and someone else answered. My heart stopped. Someone else answered. Kept reading. Robert. The woman said she'd had this number for over a year. Linda. Maybe Emma changed it and forgot to tell you. Robert. Emma doesn't forget things like that. The tears came immediately. 'Cause once again, he defended me when I wasn't there to defend myself. He trusted me when he had every reason not to. Tyler suddenly pointed toward the final page. Emma. At the bottom sat Dad's handwriting. Not type. Written. If you're reading this, then I was right about one thing. The problem was never love. It was fear. Please remember that before anger convinces you otherwise. I stared at the sentence. The problem was never love. For years I thought love disappeared. That families simply stopped caring. That people replaced each other. But sitting in that storage unit surrounded by years of evidence, I finally understood something. Love had never left the room. Fear just got there first. Tyler sat down heavily against one of the boxes. So what happens now? The question hung in the air. Because we both knew what came next. Conversations. Hard ones. Necessary ones. Not because revenge would fix anything. Because truth was owed to everyone involved. I looked around the storage unit one final time. The boxes. The letters. The photographs. The records. The years my father spent fighting for a relationship everyone else thought was already gone. Then I noticed something sitting underneath the folder. A small digital recorder. Different from the first one. A sticky note sat attached to it. For Emma and Linda. Together. Tyler stared at it. So he knew this day would come. I picked up the recorder carefully. No. I looked down at Dad's handwriting. I think he hoped it would. Because hope was stubborn. And according to Dad, I inherited that from him. I turned the recorder over in my hands. Black. Ordinary. Amazing how ordinary things become terrifying when you know they contain answers. For Emma and Linda. Together. Dad's handwriting stared back at me. Not Emma. Not Linda. Emma and Linda. Together. Tyler noticed my expression immediately. Do you think she knows about this? I shook my head. If she did, she probably would have destroyed it. The words came out harsher than I intended. Tyler didn't argue, because for the first time since this began, neither of us could defend what the evidence was starting to say. I slipped the recorder into my bag. We should go. Neither of us asked where. 'Cause we both knew. Not my apartment. Not the workshop. Dad's house. The place where all of this started. The drive felt shorter than it should have. Or maybe my mind was too loud to notice time passing. Questions, memories, anger, fear, grief. Everything crashed together until I couldn't separate one emotion from another. Tyler parked in the driveway but didn't turn off the engine. You don't have to do this today. I looked toward the house. The curtains moved slightly in the front window. Someone was home. No. I took a slow breath. I think I do. Linda opened the door before we knocked. The moment she saw me standing there beside Tyler, something changed in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition. As if she'd known this day would come for a very long time. Emma. Just my name. Nothing else. No explanation. No questions. Just my name. We found the storage unit. The color drained from her face immediately. For a moment nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then she stepped aside. Come in. The living room looked the same. Dad's chair. Dad's books. Dad's reading glasses still sitting beside the lamp. For a second it felt impossible that he wasn't there. Linda sat slowly on the couch. Tyler remained standing. I stayed near the doorway. Distance felt safer. Her eyes moved toward my bag. You found the recorder. Not a question. A statement. My heartbeat quickened. You knew about it. Linda closed her eyes. Yes. The room went silent. I pulled the recorder out and placed it on the coffee table. He wanted us to listen together. Tears filled her eyes immediately. I know. Press play. Static. Then Dad's voice. If you're hearing this, then I'm gone. Was. And somehow, against all odds, the two of you are sitting in the same room. His voice softened slightly. That probably means the truth finally caught up with all of us. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Linda. The sound of her name nearly broke her. I know what you did. The tears spilled down her face instantly. Tyler looked down at the floor. I couldn't move. Dad continued. I knew for a long time. My head snapped up. What? I didn't know everything. Another pause. But I knew enough. Linda covered her mouth. I saw letters disappear. Paper moved somewhere in the background. I found changed contact information. Another pause. I heard explanations that stopped making sense. The room felt impossibly quiet. Then came the sentence none of us expected. And I knew you were scared. Linda started crying openly now. Not quietly. Not politely. The kind of crying that comes from carrying something too heavy for too long. Dad continued. When Emma left for college, you were afraid. Another pause. You were afraid I'd lose interest in the family we built together. Linda shook her head immediately. No. But Dad kept speaking. You were afraid that every holiday, every birthday, every milestone would remind me that I'd missed years of my daughter's life. Tears ran down her face. You thought if Emma disappeared from our lives, the comparison would disappear too. Silence. Heavy silence. You weren't trying to hurt Emma. Another pause. You were trying to stop yourself from losing me. Linda broke completely. Because sometimes being understood hurts more than being accused. Dad's voice softened. But fear has a way of convincing good people that selfish decisions are survival. Nobody in the room moved. Nobody in the room disagreed. Then came the line that changed everything. Linda, if you're hearing this, I already forgave you. Her head snapped upward. What? Even Tyler looked shocked. Dad continued. Forgiveness isn't permission. Another pause. It doesn't erase consequences. It doesn't rebuild trust overnight. But carrying anger into the grave seemed like a waste of time I didn't have left. The room disappeared around me. Because somehow, even here, even now, he was choosing peace. Not revenge. Not punishment. Then his voice changed. Emma. My chest tightened immediately. If you're listening, there's something I need from you. Closed my eyes. Don't inherit my silence. Ask questions sooner. Another pause. Fight harder for the people you love. And when something doesn't make sense, don't build a story around the missing pieces. The tears came instantly. Because that was exactly what I'd done. Exactly. I built an entire life around assumptions. An entire grief around unanswered questions. An entire version of my father that never existed. The recording continued. The three of you still have time. Use it better than we did. Then silence. The recording ended. No music. No dramatic goodbye. Just silence. Real life rarely ends with perfect speeches. Linda cried quietly into her hands. Tyler stared at the floor. I looked at Dad's empty chair. For the first time in 6 years. I wasn't angry at him. For the first time in 6 years. I wasn't angry at myself either. I was angry at fear. Silence. At all the tiny decisions that slowly became 6 lost years. Linda finally looked at me. I'm sorry. 2 words. Small words. Late words. Important words. I told myself I was protecting my family. Her voice broke. I didn't realize I was destroying it. I believed her. Not because the damage wasn't real. Because regret was written across every inch of her face. The room stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, I looked toward the window. The sun was starting to set. Dad always loved sunsets. He said they reminded him that endings and beginnings often happen at the same time. For the first time, I think I finally understood what he meant. For a long time nobody said anything. The house felt different now. Not because the furniture had changed. Not because Dad was gone. Because the truth was finally sitting in the room with us. And truth takes up space. Linda finally wiped her eyes and looked toward the hallway. There's something else. My stomach tightened immediately. Because in families like ours, there always seemed to be something else. She stood slowly, then disappeared upstairs. A minute later she returned carrying a blue folder. The blue folder. The same one from the photograph in the workshop. The same one sitting beside Dad in the storage unit picture. She placed it carefully on the coffee table. I couldn't throw it away. My eyes moved to the label. Just my name. Again. Always my name. Linda looked down at her hands. He worked on this almost every week. I frowned. What is it? Her eyes filled with tears again. Everything he wanted to tell you if he ever got the chance. The room went silent. I opened it carefully. Inside were photographs. Hundreds of them. Not old photographs. Recent ones. Me leaving work. Me buying groceries. Me speaking at a charity event. Me standing outside my apartment building holding coffee in both hands because it was freezing outside. I looked up immediately. What is this? Linda answered quietly. He asked friends to keep an eye out for you. Tyler smiled sadly. Dad called them his Emma sightings. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Of course he did. Because somehow he had turned heartbreak into a birdwatching hobby. I looked back at the photographs. Under every single one sat notes written in Dad's handwriting. Looks tired but healthy. Still carries too many groceries at once. Definitely still refuses to wear a proper winter coat. Looks happy here. That last one broke me. Looks happy here. Because even after all those years. His first concern wasn't whether she missed me. Or whether she regretted leaving. His concern was whether I was happy. I turned another page. Newspaper clippings. community newsletters. A printed article from a local magazine. Volunteer organizer helps local shelter reach record donations. My photograph sat beside the article. Underneath, Dad had written, "Always knew she'd change lives." The tears blurred the page instantly. Because I never told him about the shelter. Never told him about the volunteer work. Never told him about any of it. Somehow, he still knew. Linda watched quietly. "He was proud of you." I looked up. He had no reason to be. Her expression changed immediately. He had every reason to be. The certainty in her voice surprised me. For a moment she wasn't the woman who kept us apart. She was simply someone who loved the same man I did. "He talked about you constantly." She smiled through tears. Every achievement somehow became part of a conversation. Emma got promoted. Emma bought an apartment. Emma always loved autumn. Emma would know how to fix this shelf. Emma would laugh at this movie. Emma hated mushrooms. Tyler laughed softly. Seriously hated mushrooms. Despite everything, I smiled. 'Cause it was true. Dad used to hide them in food and pretend they weren't there. I always found them. Always. I turned another page. List. Written by hand. Things to ask Emma if she ever comes back. My hand shook immediately. Number 1. Did she ever visit Italy like she wanted? Number 2. Is she still writing in those little notebooks? Number 3. Did she ever forgive herself for things that weren't her fault? I stopped reading. Because that question wasn't random. Dad knew me too well for random questions. He knew guilt lived inside me long before this story ever started. I turned another page. Another list. Things Emma should know. You were never difficult to love. You were never forgotten. You were never replaced. The tears came so fast I couldn't stop them. Because those were the 3 fears I carried for 6 years. Somehow, he answered every single one. The room remained silent. Finally Linda spoke. There were days he almost gave up. I looked at her. But he never actually did. She smiled sadly. He'd say, "Emma gets her stubbornness from me." Tyler laughed quietly. He wasn't wrong. I looked down at the folder. The photographs. The notes. The list. Years. And suddenly I realized something. The inheritance wasn't the house. Or the money. Or the workshop. The inheritance was evidence. Proof. Proof that love existed even when I couldn't see it. Proof that I mattered even when I believed I didn't. Proof that somewhere for 6 years, someone kept saving pieces of my life because he hoped one day I'd want them back. The sun had almost disappeared outside. The room glowed orange. Dad loved sunsets. He said they made people slow down long enough to tell the truth. Linda finally looked at me. "I don't expect forgiveness." I met her eyes. "Good." She nodded slowly. "Because I haven't earned it yet." No excuses. No explanations. No defending herself. Just honesty. For the first time since I met her. Honesty. And strangely, that felt like the first brick in rebuilding something. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe possibility. I closed the blue folder carefully. For years I thought my father left me nothing. No explanation. No goodbye. No inheritance. I was wrong. He left me letters. Memories. Questions. Answers. And a final lesson hidden inside all of them. Love isn't measured by how loudly people say it. Sometimes it's measured by how long they keep saying it after nobody answers back. That night I took the blue folder home. Not because I was afraid someone would move it. Because I wasn't ready to let it out of my sight. For 6 years I thought I had lost my father twice. Once when he left after the divorce. And once when he died. Now I was discovering something stranger. I had never really lost him at all. Not in the ways that mattered. The folder sat beside me on the couch while rain tapped softly against the windows. For the first time in years, my apartment didn't feel empty. Heavy. Complicated. Confusing. But not empty. I opened the folder again. Near the back sat several small envelopes clipped together with a note. Voicemails. If Emma ever comes back, let her hear these. My hand started shaking immediately. Voicemails. Plural. I reached for the first recording. The date appeared on the screen. My 27th birthday. Press play. Happy birthday, kiddo. His voice sounded younger than the recordings from the storage unit. Stronger. I know you're probably busy pretending 27 isn't close to 30. I laughed through tears. Because that joke was older than I was. I bought your favorite chocolate cake. Was. Again. Another pause. Your stepbrother says that's becoming a problem. I heard Tyler laughing somewhere in the background. Dad continued. If you call back, you can have half. Then quietly. If you don't, I'll save you a piece anyway. The recording ended. I stared at the screen. Because somewhere 6 years ago, a piece of cake sat in a refrigerator waiting for a daughter who never knew she was invited. Played the next one. Christmas Eve. Hey, sweetheart. Music played softly in the background. Christmas music. Bad Christmas music. Dad loved bad Christmas music. Your sister burned the cookies. A voice shouted from the distance. I heard that. Oofy. Dad laughed. We're pretending they're supposed to look like that. Was. We miss you. Then more quietly. I miss you. The message ended there. Simple. Honest. Enough to break me completely. One after another I listened. Birthdays. Promotions. Holidays. Random Tuesdays. Small moments. Ordinary moments. The kind of moments families collect without realizing how valuable they are. Then I reached the final voicemail. The file name read. She finally listens. Press play. The recording started immediately. No jokes this time. His voice sounded tired. Softer. Older. If you're hearing this, then something finally worked. Long pause. I spent years wondering what I did wrong. Another pause. Then I spent years wondering what you did wrong. His breathing slowed. The truth was harder. Another pause. Neither of us did. Tears filled my eyes. Sometimes good people get separated by fear, pride, and silence. His voice cracks slightly. And by the time they realize it, he stopped speaking. They think too much time has passed. Closed my eyes. 'Cause that was it. That was the entire story. Not betrayal. Not abandonment. Silence. Fear. Dad continued. If you're listening to this, I need one favor. I whispered the words before he said them. Call someone. His voice answered mine. Call someone. Small laugh escaped me. 'Cause of course I knew. Call the person you're sure doesn't want to hear from you. Another pause. Call the person you're waiting on. Stop making people prove they love you before you let them. The room disappeared around me. 'Cause I had done exactly that. For years. Without even realizing it. The recording ended. No goodbye. No dramatic final sentence. Just the quiet sound of him setting the phone down. I sat there for a long time. The rain outside growing heavier. The apartment growing darker. My phone sat on the table beside me. One missed call notification from Sophie. Another from Tyler. A message from Linda. Hope you're okay. Simple words. Ordinary words. For years I would have ignored them. Not this time. Called Sophie first. She answered on the first ring. Emma. Her voice sounded worried. I'm okay. Silence. Good. That was all. But somehow it was enough. Next Tyler. Then Linda. 3 phone calls. 3 conversations. 3 small decisions. The kind of decisions that seem insignificant while you're making them. The kind that change lives anyway. A week later we met at the workshop. All of us. No lawyers. No evidence. No recordings. Just coffee and uncomfortable honesty. The best kind. Tyler fixed a cabinet door. Sophie organized shelves. Linda cleaned old paintbrushes. I stood near Dad's workbench. For a while nobody spoke. Then Sophie held up an old photograph. Was this really your haircut in college? I grabbed the picture immediately. Give me that. Tyler started laughing. Linda laughed too. And for one strange moment, the sound felt familiar. Not because we'd done this before. Because maybe we were finally learning how. I looked toward Dad's chair. Me. But somehow not lonely. Because for the first time since the funeral, the family he spent years trying to protect was sitting in the same room. Talking. Laughing. Trying. The workshop window stood open. Outside, the old tree beside the building moved gently in the wind. Dad called it the listening tree. He said every workshop needed someone to listen while people figured things out. Turns out he was right about that too. The workshop became our meeting place after that. Not because anyone suggested it. Because somehow we all kept ending up there. Maybe grief needs locations. Maybe healing does too. Every Sunday afternoon, one more chair would be pulled around the old workbench. Sometimes we talked about Dad. Sometimes we avoided talking about him completely. Both felt important. One afternoon, Sophie walked into the workshop carrying a cardboard box. Found these in the attic. Photographs. Hundreds of them. Birthday parties. Camping trips. School concerts. Christmas mornings. Entire years sitting quietly inside a box. Then Sophie stopped moving. Emma! She handed me one photograph. Dad stood beside a graduation banner, holding flowers, smiling at the camera. The date was written on the back. My college graduation. My breath caught. Because Dad wasn't there. I remembered that day perfectly. I remembered looking for him in the crowd. I remembered being disappointed when he never showed up. I turned the photograph over. Dad's handwriting. Arrived 30 minutes early. Left flowers with security when they said guests weren't allowed inside without registration. Linda said Emma already knew I couldn't come. I looked up slowly. Linda had gone completely pale. Her voice disappeared. I stared at the photograph. Because even after everything, there was more. Always more. I didn't know he came. Linda nodded weakly. I know. The room stayed silent. Finally she spoke. He asked me if you looked happy. The tears started immediately. He wanted details. Another pause. What you wore. Whether you smiled. Whether you looked nervous. I looked down at the photograph. At the flowers in his hand. Flowers I never received. Flowers I never even knew existed. Tyler sat quietly beside me. Nobody tried to explain it away. Nobody tried to make it smaller than it was. Because some moments deserve their full weight. Linda finally looked at me. I stole moments from both of you. The honesty in her voice hurt more than excuses would have. I kept telling myself I was protecting my family. She shook her head. But I was protecting my fear. Nobody disagreed. Because fear had been the villain of this story from the beginning. Not greed. Not hatred. Fear. Fear of replacement. Fear of rejection. Fear of not being enough. Fear wearing different faces. The following month, Mr. Harrison called again. There was one final item in your father's will. I almost laughed. Course there was. Dad had apparently planned emotional surprises for years. We met at his office. Mr. Harrison placed a small wooden box on the desk. Workshop craftsmanship. Dad's craftsmanship. Inside sat a watch. Cratch. Beautiful. His watch. The one he wore almost every day of my childhood. Underneath it sat another letter. Sweetheart. If you're reading this, then Mr. Harrison finally ran out of dramatic reveals. I laughed immediately. 'Cause of course he wrote that. The letter continued. This watch belonged to my father before it belonged to me. Now it belongs to you. Not because it's valuable. Because it reminds people of something important. Time matters. Not the amount of it. The use of it. Call people sooner. Forgive people faster. Ask questions while answers still exist. And if someone you love suddenly starts acting like a stranger, get curious before you get angry. My eyes filled with tears again. Because somehow, even his life lessons sounded like parenting. The letter ended with one final line. Chris, You still owe me one trip to Italy. I expect updates eventually. I laughed and cried at the same time. Tyler looked over my shoulder. Still want to go? Smiled. Yeah. He nodded. Good. Sophie grinned. Take pictures. Even Linda smiled a little. For the first time it didn't feel forced. Felt hopeful. Months passed. Spring became summer. Summer became autumn. The workshop project slowly grew. Started with fixing shelves. Then repainting walls. Then opening the doors to neighborhood families on weekends. Dad had always helped people build things. Birdhouses, bookshelves, tables, confidence, relationships. We decided to keep doing that. The sign above the entrance simply read, "The Listening Workshop." No explanation needed. People came. Children built toy boxes. Parents fixed broken chairs. Grandparents shared stories nobody wanted to end. And somewhere inside all that noise and sawdust and laughter, Dad stayed. One afternoon, a teenage boy sat alone near the workbench, staring at his phone. "Everything okay?" he asked. He shrugged. "Haven't spoken to my dad in 8 months." I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke for a minute. Then I asked the question I wish someone had asked me years earlier. "Are you sure you know why?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" I looked toward the old listening tree outside the window. Then back at him. "I mean, stories have 2 versions. And sometimes both people are missing pages." He thought about that for a long time. Before leaving, he thanked me. 3 weeks later he came back, smiling. We talked. Just 2 words. But sometimes 2 words are enough. That night I sat alone in the workshop after everyone left. Dad's chair sat beside the window. The same chair. The same room. Completely different life. For years I thought my inheritance had been stolen. I thought someone took my father from me. The truth was more complicated. And somehow simpler. Love had survived. Even when communication didn't. Even when trust didn't. Even when we didn't. My phone buzzed. A message from Tyler. "Sunday dinner." Another from Sophie. "Tell Emma dessert is mandatory." Then another. From Linda. "Your father would have loved today." I looked around the workshop. The shelves. The photographs. The listening tree outside. The empty chair that somehow never felt empty anymore. Then I typed back. He probably did. And for the first time in a very long time, home didn't feel like a place I'd lost. It felt like a place I'd finally found again. A year later we stopped calling it Dad's workshop. Not because we forgot who built it. Because somehow it had become bigger than one person. Bigger than grief. Bigger than mistakes. Bigger than the years we lost. The listening workshop had become part of the town. Every Saturday morning the parking lot filled before we even unlocked the doors. Children building birdhouses. Parents repairing furniture. Teenagers learning to use tools for the first time. Older couples bringing in projects they'd been meaning to finish for years. Broken things. Half-finished things. Things worth saving. Dad would have loved that. Actually, Dad would have corrected everyone's measurements and complained about their sanding techniques. Then he would have loved it. One rainy afternoon, Sophie walked over holding an old notebook. "Found this behind the bookshelf." Course she did. Because apparently our family specialized in emotional discoveries hidden inside furniture. I opened it carefully. Dad's handwriting. Again. The first page read, "Things worth keeping." Underneath was a list. Family dinners. Bad jokes. Phone calls that last too long. People who come back. Second chances. I smiled immediately. Because that list explained my father better than any biography ever could. I turned another page. Things people regret too late. Waiting. Assuming. Pride. Unasked questions. Unread messages. The room suddenly felt quiet. Because every item on that list had once been part of our story. Then I reached the final page. If you're reading this, then you made it. Not through grief. Not through betrayal. Through understanding. Remember this. Most people aren't trying to hurt each other. Most people are trying to protect themselves. Sometimes those become the same thing. Please be careful with fear. Speaks with your voice and sounds like truth. I stared at the words for a long time. 'Cause he was right. Fear sounded like certainty. Fear said, "He forgot you. She replaced you. They don't care anymore." Fear never announces itself as fear. It announces itself as facts. And that's what makes it dangerous. Few weeks later, Tyler called me. Not texted. "Oh, can you come by the workshop? Everything okay?" "Yeah." Was. "Actually, it's kind of amazing." When I arrived, I found a teenage girl standing near the workbench. Nervous. Holding an envelope. She couldn't have been older than 16. "My grandfather used to come here." She held out the envelope. "He passed away last month." I took it carefully. Inside was a letter. Short. Simple. If you're reading this, then I probably waited too long to say some things. The people at this workshop understand why that's a bad idea. Please call your sister for me. The girl laughed through tears. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. I looked around the room. The tools. The photographs. The listening tree outside the window. Dad's legacy had become contagious. One repaired relationship becoming another. One difficult conversation becoming another. One family helping another family avoid the mistakes we made. That evening, after everyone left, I stayed behind to close up. The workshop was quiet. Comfortably quiet. I sat in Dad's chair. The same chair I used to avoid looking at. Now it felt different. Not painful. Not empty. Familiar. My phone buzzed. "Taylor. Sunday dinner still happening." A second later. "Sophie. Tell Tyler I'm not making dessert again." "Linda. Your father would have sided with Sophie." I laughed. Then typed back. "He absolutely would have." I looked out the window. The listening tree moved gently in the wind. Still there. Still growing. Just like us. For years I thought my story was about inheritance. Then I thought it was about betrayal. Then forgiveness. The truth was simpler than all of them. My story was about communication. About the cost of assumptions. About how silence grows when nobody challenges it. Most importantly, it was about love. The stubborn kind. The inconvenient kind. The kind that keeps sending letters nobody answers. The kind that buys birthday cakes every year anyway. The kind that keeps your favorite cookies in the house just in case. The kind that refuses to disappear even when everything else does. I reached into my pocket and held Dad's watch. Time moving forward. Like it always does. The difference now was that I finally understood what he wanted me to do with it. Use it. Call first. Ask questions sooner. Love louder. Forgive faster. And never let silence tell someone else's story for me again. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. It isn't property. It isn't a house or a business or a watch passed down through generations. Sometimes the greatest inheritance is finally discovering you were loved all along. And having enough time left to carry that love forward. Every single day.